Hi guys. Okay, good morning. And we're headed to Mississippi to a private invitational little camp out. Got a little later start than I wanted to. I wanted to start out about 5 this morning, but we had that severe line of thunderstorms come through Alabama and tore up a lot of stuff. And I had some close friends and family members that had a bunch of limbs, and one guy had a tree come down, and all of them wanted me to come by and take a look and see if I saw something need to be addressed right now. So at first light, I was out running around to a couple of friends' places. One of them had a tree that come down and hit the house. Hadn't done hardly any damage. It just, I say a tree, it was the top of a tree is what it was. But at night you couldn't tell nothing, but in daylight you can see it. So I'm getting a start about 2 hours later than I wanted to start, but we're off. I know I'm not wearing my hat. Well, it doesn't work with a headrest real well. And I got a 5-hour run in front of me. So we're going to run over here, grab a cup of coffee, and we're on the way. I'll check back in with you in a few minutes. Okay. I'm about 30 miles from the Mississippi line at this time. This camp out that I'm going to will be the first time I'm going to get to use the hot tent that I recently got. That's the One Wind hot tent, and I will put in the description box what its official designation is. I'm going to be wrong here, guys, like Petunda, something like that. I suck at names, guys. I'm sorry. But I've got my little wood stove, and I'm going to be setting up with it. And I'm sorry I've delayed. I've been talking about this for nearly a month. But the problem with it is whenever that severe cold snap hit, I was not in a position where I could be gone overnight to do it. And then and I hadn't got my wood stove in yet. And then when I did get the wood stove in, it warmed up to where you had days in the 70s and nights in the 50s. So you don't need a hot tent for that. So I'll be setting it up, utilizing it. I brought pre-cut wood that I picked up locally and used my silky saw to cut it down to size so it is stove wood. Now, back in the days, we used to use that as a designation. There was firewood, there was stove wood. Stove wood was usually like 2-3 inches in diameter at the most, and was normally about 10-12 inches long at the most. It was something you could easily go through the door of the old wood stoves and drop into the firebox. It would give you a way of regulating, because if you had seasoned hickory that was of that size, you knew roughly how hot it was and roughly how long it lasted. And so it allowed you to kind of regulate the heat in one of those stoves by how much fire. Now, also on top of those stoves, you moved it around. So you had a hot spot in the middle, and you'd move it closer or farther away from the hot spot to make it, boil harder or boil less. But in the little wood stove that I'm going to be utilizing in the tent, it's simply a way for me to regulate and have guarantee if something's going to go in, I can close the door. Which is a big thing, so that, if I'm trying to use it to keep the tent warm at night, being able to simply roll over, flip the door open, 1, 2, 3, 4 of wood, and then close the door, and know it's going to fit. But I ain't got to sit there and snap and break and etc. So I went ahead and made mine up to fit. And I'm thinking that's going to be a real, good addition to utilize that. And I'll put me I've got a canteen cup I'll set on top of it with water to keep that kind of boiling and adding a little bit of moisture to the air so the air doesn't get a little too dry in there. We shall see. This is going to be a learning experience for me too, guys. Okay, I'm coming up on 23 miles to Mississippi. Yay, team. I'm going to be crossing over to Mississippi, turning north and running up to the interstate, and then heading over to the actual camping place. So, hang with me. I'll be right back.
I know they got to be top secret.
Hello, Mr. John Pinkard. Look over here and wave. Say hey.
Hey y'all. How y'all doing?
Hello there.
There's Mr. Donnie. That's his son. What's your son's name again?
Dustin.
Dustin. And there's the master chef himself, Mr. Homer.
How y'all doing?
We're putting something on a little stove now.
Coffee.
Coffee, the important stuff.
Cowboy coffee. Getting ready to make gumbo.
There's the Homer hovel right over there with the full electric hookups and everything else. This is the man who knows how to winter camp. He brings heaters and electric blankets. He is a brilliant man. It got down to what last night? Anybody know?
31.
31. Cool.
Supposed to get about
Of course,
20
Mr. William.
tonight.
Our smoky fire and dinner cooking. Our little windbreak right here. I'll walk around and show you the area a little bit, and that's where Mr. Donnie and them staying. I love these little pop-up little tents. They're just kind of cool. All right. Hi guys. Okay, I am here with my good friend William Collins, the knife master. As you guys know, he makes the Blackbird and all the knives I've worked with him over the years. Fantastic knives, and he's got some new knives that some are going to be released soon and some are going to be released a little sooner than others. So tell us about the release, what we got going on.
Well, right now, I brought the Taskmaster, which is going to be released probably in the next few weeks. And I haven't decided on how that's going to be released. And so I just brought it for Blackie to look at and share some thoughts on and see what he thinks about it.
All right, let me get you a close-up you see. Now this is innovative, guys. Now look at that. It's got this cutout right here. What that's for is for that fingertip to sit in it. So you've got a straight edge right there for using utility type work, straight cutting. But at the same time, by putting that fingertip there and that up swept tip, it allows me to skin. This will ride on the meat, see? So this can be used as a skinning knife at the same time. You still got a tooth right there for all your draws and cuts. I love the way the handle feels on it. Now the production handle will be different from this.
Yeah, we'll probably just do micarta for the production models.
But it's a good size, feels the hand well, but I really like the fact of that fingertip, because as you know, I'm a big fan of a skinning knife. It's got to be able to work as a skinner, go pierce and go underneath and just run around. And that flat right there is going to run around on the meat and let the hide roll over that edge. And it's at a good angle that it rolls up and just splits. It'd be like a zipper, open it up. It'd be very effortless.
Dan used to say, lift and separate.
Lift and separate, nice and clean lines. I don't want to make a big mess. I really like that, and it's called the Taskmaster. Okay?
The other one that's going to be released here real soon is a camp knife. Like I don't have enough camp knives. But this is the Field Boss, and that's going to be released here in the next few weeks as well. And again, how they're going to be released, I haven't decided yet, but we'll give social media notices once they are.
Yeah, just stay tuned to the channel, because if he decides he's going with dealers, he'll tell you, or if he's going to be selling them on his site, he'll tell you. He'll give you at least a couple of days head up.
Yeah.
So you got time to get your credit cards ready. But this is just a good field knife for, you know, doing a little bit of light chopping firewood and processing game and etc. Now I love the way you've done this tip on it, where you reduce the thickness to keep it where it can do its cutting, but at the same time it's not, you know, too big and broad there. It's still got a good reinforced tip. And of course you got the hook here, which is perfect for all those draw cuts and etc. that I've talked about so much. And then straight bevel. It's just a good size feeling.
A slim down or a smaller size of a parang.
Yeah.
Really is what I had in mind.
And I can see where you're coming with that. And it would work. The curve, so it curves back, it's perfect for the hit. So it slices instead of being a flat edge hit. It hits and it slices because of the curve. So when it hits the wood, it'll start curving. So you get a lot of slice cuts. Great for taking limbs, briars, brush. Let's face it, guys, if you're going to be building a cabin, you're going to be bigger tools. This is, I'm doing brush work real quick. And that curve would be perfect for that. And how thick is this?
5/32.
5/32. It's got a good.
I like thin because thin slices better.
And it's also it doesn't weigh you down as much.
Right.
You don't fatigue as fast.
Yeah, if you got too much weight on your belt or on your body, then you tend to leave it at the house.
Yep.
So,
Instead of using it for the job.
yeah.
Very nice. Now, let's talk a second about, you got some knives that are getting some field trials right now, and they're geared more toward the trapper and the people who are doing skinning game, processing game, and stuff like that.
Yeah, my mindset is to create a set or a selection of knives for the hunter. And everybody doesn't hunt the same game. I mean, you have trappers, you have medium-sized game like hogs and deer and things like that. But so that most people require a different size knife for that. But then there's others that's got elk and moose and things like that up north that really need a larger knife. But I wanted to have a group of knives that you can kind of select and choose 2 or 3 out of the bunch that fit your style or your needs. And so I have some that's in field trials right now. This is the Master Skinner that just went out to 3 different hunters that doing field trials right
now. Now, I hate, let me turn you up so you can see me a minute. I hate a unitask knife. I like jack all trades, where this knife can, yes, it's designed for this, but it does multiple things well. Okay, you know me. For a big game knife, where you're going to need the big knife and a skinning knife, you're going to use this a lot for meat prep. You're going to use this a lot for vegetable prep and etc., for cooking, etc. So it's got to function as a kitchen knife as well as a big old skinning knife. And having these jimpings right here, where you can put your fingertip on up there and grip this thing and use it on big game. You know, we're talking moose, elk, big, you know, blacktails, big, huge 400-pound whitetails, things like that. You want the bigger knife to do the job. Now, this isn't a sticker, guys. That's actually jimping, kind of like serrations put in there, so that you can grip the knife very precisely for doing precision cuts and stuff like that, especially in caping and stuff like that, where you're trying to take a trophy animal and you're wanting to take the head off. Down here in the South, we don't think that much about it because we just always just throw the deer in the truck and take it home. But you get out in the big country where it's, you know, you're miles and miles in, you're not going to haul that whole animal out. You're going to take the head, the horns, and stuff, and then hunks of meat back out. It'll take 2 or 3 trips to get this animal out. So this would be a great idea. I love that jimping. It's got the fuller, and then it goes to the jimping. That jimping is never going to get slick. So when your hands are bloody and etc. doing the job, it's going to grip, and you're going to have something you can get a hold of. It's very unique design, but you still got all the tooth and all the stuff for processing of other stuff. Very unique design. I like that.
During the other trials of other knives, it's got that tooth. Find that tooth goes through gristle and dense parts of the carcass a lot easier. One guy made the comment that it was like one serration. So if you can think about just one serration going through the gristle and tendons and things like that, he said it worked phenomenal doing that. But so that tooth is very beneficial, especially ringing the legs and things like that. Through field trials, we found out that's very helpful in processing and demembering game. So anyway, yeah, I've got this going out to 3 different professional hunters that's going to be doing field trials and seeing if we need to tweak it this way or that way. But I think it's very close to what, and I'm looking at doing a release on the Skinner sets, probably the first part of summer, and anticipating manufacturing and getting those out to the customers by before hunting season. Anyway, that's the goals.
Right.
So this is the Master Skinner,
which is the big knife.
Yeah, that's the big Skinner.
And
that's for the big. That's for the woolly mammoths.
Yeah. Now scale it down just slightly, because you don't need quite that big a knife, and he's got the one in the middle of it, which is called just plain the Skinner.
Junior Skinner.
The Junior Skinner. More kind of like a caping in the roll of it. Again, you got the finger dip. Now notice that when the finger sits into it, it isn't up on top, it actually drops it down. So you've got a little bit of pierce that you could pierce in, you know, and go up, which would be very, very handy. Then you got the jimping on the back when you got to bear down to push through and etc. And like you said, that one serration, which is I like mine when I'm trying to cut the ribs out. You can hook that rib gristle and just kind of get in there and hook it, or actually get underneath the rib and hook and pull it out, because it'll slice the cartilage and just come out,
Right.
almost like a finger hook or something. Very
A lot of
nice.
people have been using it for bellies too. You can just
Uh-huh.
run up like a zipper
Mm-hmm.
under the belly because you have a gauged cut depth.
Mm-hmm. True, because it's going to sit right on the meat, so just push down and pull to me. Be very good, especially with thicker skinned animals, heavier stuff. It's the full tang, goes all the way down. It's that micarta that takes, it's good and serrated, good and textured, I should say, so it's not going to be slick in the hand. Very nice. Now, let's see the first one again. So you see, it'd be like if you're needing the big knife because you're hunting moose and stuff, this would be the small companion knife to this for doing the detail work. So this is the big one and this is the detail. Now, if you don't need quite this big and this, there's also going the other way. And this one is called the Master Trapper.
Yep.
Okay, this is the small knife. It's got the serrations up here again, but now you're doing a lot of smaller game. Maybe you're doing, ducks, goose, turkey, as well as shooting deer, whitetails, small hog,
Caping
stuff.
knife.
Caping knife. Getting in there and doing the detail work.
Taxidermy.
Taxidermy. Exactly. Or you just like to do a lot of it'd be great for fish too.
Actually a great EDC. A lot of people that's been testing this is saying it's a great EDC.
It's not so radical. It looks straight until you get up there and you look and you see how the bevel goes off, and it does have a little bit of a curve there, so that will again ride on top, so you can skin small thin game. It's nice and thin to get in there, and like he's talking about, when you're trying to do taxidermy, you're trying to take the face off and everything else. I remember Dan talking about the little finger knives.
Yeah.
That when he's doing precision work, the money knife was always a tiny little knife to do tiny little detail, because you had to get in such nooks and crannies. And so this, with the other two, makes up like the full set. Now, will you offer them as a full set as well as individuals?
Yeah, they may. Like I say, I don't know. We're exploring at this point, but
But yeah, that would be like the guy that wants it all. You know what I mean? I like that. I really do. This one really talks to me. I like all of them, but this little one really talks to me. This, like you said, be a great just EDC, a small. There are a lot of guys that just don't like the big blades.
right.
Even for bushcraft, they want to do detail work and stuff like that, like what they call sloyd out of European stuff. This would be a perfect size knife for doing that type of
Kind of like that.
Yes, exactly. That little bitty crafting knife, general utility knife and everything with that little point. Oh yeah, just simple, but it's still got the hook and it's still got that edge down there.
That's the Master Floyd. That's. I mean, I think this one will be released probably in the next few weeks as well.
Cool.
See, the tip is different than that, but everything else is pretty much the same.
Roughly the same idea, but you're focusing more on a crafting knife,
Right.
general purpose knife, and this one is focusing on a general purpose and a game processing, a skinning processing knife. Very, very nice. I love the way you make handles that fill a hand. Too many times they try to make small knives and they make too small handles. They're going trying to be artsy with the handles, and it really don't fill your hand and do the job.
Well, I mean, if a knife isn't comfortable, then you're not going to use it. And also, if it's too thin that you can't grip it, you're not going to have control. And if you don't have control of a knife, it's going to hurt you. So I like robust handles to where you can it doesn't cause cramps or fatigue in your hands, and have a lot of control on that blade. So
That's the thing I hear from a lot of new hunters and stuff, that they were excited about the part of getting a deer. Now they're learning how to clean a deer. And they suddenly find out it ain't a 10-minute job to fully process a deer. And guys talking about how the hands start cramping up and everything, and I talk about you need a bigger knife, you need a bigger handle. You know.
well, I mean, even these, I mean, most of the time you think about the time of the year that you're using these knives, you're going to be wearing gloves because it's going to be cold.
Your hands
So,
are numb.
Yeah, so you need a handle that you can feel. So a generous handle I think it's a must with these knives, especially for game prep and things like that, because you're going to be using them, like I said, in cold weather. You're going to have gloves, So you need a handle that you can feel.
Now, what kind of material are these made out of?
Well, when we release them, we'll have to see what kind of material they'll be, but they'll be stainless steel.
Good.
I hope that we can get AEBL at that point. AEBL is starting to come back into stock, so I think they're going to be AEBL. That's the goal anyway.
ABL, the knives that we've talked about in the past, it holds an edge. It's really meant to be razor blade steel, but Williams using it in another light, a much thicker stock, and because of that, it holds an edge just phenomenally. But the fact it's also a base stainless, it's not going to rust easy, etc. So you can get that thin edge. You don't worry about it rusting and deteriorating.
Yeah, also, I mean, AEBL is a different animal, and I've done a lot of tests with different types of steel and compared it to those and do a lot of cut tests with it. AEBL is a type of steel that I haven't come across before. It's got K2 carbides, which makes it, like he was saying, a razor steel that gets a very fine edge. But those K2 carbides give it a little toothy feel to where it slices like a dream. But most stainless steels are very difficult to keep or maintain with sharpening, but AEBL actually sharpens easier than 01, which is during all of our tests and everything a few years back, it was kind of surprising how easy it was to maintain.
That's the thing to me. It was very easy to maintain the field with little or no effort.
Yeah.
Just match the bevel and just a few strokes, and it came right back to king.
Yeah, well, I mean, even these knives, the bevel looks weird and looks different, but it's not. It's the same bevel all the way through. So once you lay this on the stone, that same bevel, just follow that same angle all the way through, and you're sharpening the blade. So it's actually intuitive. Once you find that bevel, that Scandi portion, it's the same bevel all the way through. So as far as maintaining them, I think they're easier to maintain than, say, a saber or a full flat, because you have to find the angle on a full flat, where it shows the angle. It actually, you can feel it when you hit the angle. So
Put it on the stone, you'll have a little bit of gap. Bring it down till the gap disappears on the stone, keep it like that and slide it flat. That's all you got to know. It doesn't have to be, very difficult, but like you're saying, like a lot of the fancy grinds, you lay it up there and it's not really, you're actually on a bevel, and so you're not actually doing it. So.
It's actually more of a learning curve on the other grinds than it is on these, because these is, you hit it, once you feel it, then that's the angle. So if you can sharpen a Scandi, you can sharpen these. Yeah, there is a little bit of a recurve there, but the learning curve on that is just seconds. It's just a matter of making sure that you follow that recurve. You just follow the edge. That's all you got to do.
Carrying one of the round diamond hones with you to the field.
Yeah.
So when
a ceramic rod.
Exactly. So whenever you're cleaning the big game and you need that break, and that's what I try to teach people. If you're getting tired, stop. You're going to mess up. It's better to stop, take 5 minutes, take a drink of something, sit there, walk around, flex around, look over yonder, let your eyes rest, and then come back to the processing, etc. That's also a good time to just check the edge of the knife. Check it. If it's where you want it, keep going. If not, bring out that round rod and just a couple of strokes. Don't sit there and spend 10 minutes. You're not a chef. Just touch it up where it's got that toothiness again and then go back to it. If you don't let it get truly dull, you don't have to sharpen it. You're just honing it.
Right.
And it gives you a good break too. It's like, okay, and I quite often do that with deer. Whenever I go to process it, I get it down, I get it feel gooded, then I get it hung up or whatever. Now, okay, I'll take a 5-10 minute break. Then I come back, I get the hide off of it, I take a minute break, and then I go to processing meat. And you get a rhythm and a style going to it where it's not so rushed and you're not getting so tired. And like we're talking about, it's winter, it's cold, your hands are cold, and you're sitting here trying to do all this stuff with a sharp blade and your other hand's in there. You're just going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to take a minute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime you're using a knife, you want to be well rested and feel your hands and feel the knife, and so.
Well, that's one of the things you've done that I really like, of you putting these big, robust jimping. So when my hands go, I'll feel that.
Yeah.
As opposed to some of these guys that got these super fine little things. When your hand gets cold, you don't even feel that really.
Yeah.
And what you put on there, that serration, that's aggressive, guys. When you touch it, you're going to know it.
Yeah, this is actually lasered. It's actually cut into the steel. It's not applied, it's cut into the steel. So somebody was saying that the fat would fill that up. We're doing field tests, but I don't think that it's going to be a problem. But again, that's what field test is for, to see. But
it being stainless, and you can put it in just hot tap water and
Yeah.
melt in a little Dawn dishwashing liquid, and any fat will come right out of that.
yeah, yeah. So I'm really interested to see how the field trials go. Actually, it's so dense you could it actually kind of scrubs my hide a little bit. You can trim your fingernails with it as well.
Yeah.
So if you get a hangnail, you can take care of it right there.
Well, and that would be an advantage too, because you know sometimes when you shoot, you hit a rib bone.
Yeah.
And you got splintered rib.
Yeah.
You could take that and just kind of blunt off that
blunt it
sharp
off,
piece
yeah.
of bone here, etc.
But yeah, it's I'm really interested to see how the guys in the field test these out. Well, I have one in Canada that's testing it out. They're going on some moose hunts, and so I'm kind of hoping that they get a moose and try it out on that. Some people would even like that for a belt knife for whitetail. Some of the whitetail up in northern America this would be perfect for that. So
Some of them big Ohio 400 pounders, yeah.
yeah.
Big knife for a big game animal.
Yeah, actually, you know, a lot of the hogs that we get around here, you would need a large knife like this to process one of the hogs. So
I tell you what, down in my neck of the woods, hogs down around my area are around such sandy land. They're all the time laying in sand, and it actually gets in their hide. And you'll go to, what I recommend people do is when they said, you know, how do you process one of the big hogs? A real big one, real thick hide, you take a box cutter blade, and that's because you're sacrificing that blade.
Right. Yeah.
Now, once you peel the hide back, then go to your good knife.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once you pierce the hide, the design on this one is to get underneath the hide.
Yeah,
So
once you're under
you don't
it.
want over it. But yeah, going around the legs and things like that, yeah, a box cutter would be very beneficial.
Just go ahead and use it because there's so much, those hides are so thick and they've got so much stuff in them. I mean, I have literally been cleaning a hog and hit a patch of, it's like grit, like sand. It was just embedded in the skin and the skin grew over it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that you consider. But like you said, with that design, you're going to get underneath the hide and lift and separate. So you're coming from the bottom. Instead of you're cutting the surface, you're actually cutting it from the bottom to the surface.
Yeah,
Very little exposure.
And two, when you're coming down and you're trying to separate the hide from the carcass, that tip is out of the way so you don't puncture that hide.
You can get more of the ulu-like roll
Right.
when you're taking that
When you're coming
connective
down.
and stuff and coming down.
And then your hand up here and the balance on them is right there. So
Oh, perfect.
yeah, so I mean, you don't have arm fatigue because you have a weighty handle when you're trying to get up there on the tip. And when your hand is there, then that's where the balance is at. So you're always right in the middle of the knife. No matter how you're holding it, that's where the balance is.
And now I want everybody to realize, because I've got 10,000 new viewers in the last year that may have not seen me and William talking. William hand grinds these. You use the machinery, of course, but you're doing all these. You're the one doing this. This ain't a machine production dude. He's making these. These are custom knives. So that balance that he's talking about, that's not some stuff. That's his geometry is when he's making it to make sure it's balanced. You know, removing the material till it balances. That's detail.
Yeah, that's part of the design process because again, you know, some of the choppers you want a weight heavy blade. Like this one, you want the blade, you want the balance,
Weight up there.
weight up there on the blade because you want the blade heavy. So that's part of design. So if a knife isn't balanced to what your task is, then it's going to fatigue your arm. It's going to be uncomfortable to use, and if you get tired, that's when mistakes happen. That's when somebody gets hurt. So when I'm designing a knife or a concept, then balance is a huge part of that.
And that's something that really to me is missed, because a lot of today with computer technology, a lot of the knife designs are getting made on a computer. They sit there and they draw it out.
Well, it looks cool. Yeah.
It looks cool. Oh man, that looks great. And they get them to water laser it out of blank, and then they slap their handles on it.
Mm-hmm.
And in computer and real life, it's not necessarily equate to it. And so unless you can actually hold and use, and you guys out there know what I'm talking about, a lot of knives look really good till you pick it up.
Now, you throw it in a drawer and you never use it again.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't whatever. I've had a ton of knives that I've spent money on. Man, that looks so cool, and yes, it looked cool, but it didn't perform. And then I've had some butt ugly cheap knives. And you always go for that because
it works.
It worked. And
Yeah.
you know, and that's the real respect I have with William. Every one of these knives he builds to work. You know, it's not just he's not just making knives to sell knives. It's meant to work.
Yeah, well, WC knives made to work. I mean, that's not to be abused, but to perform in what that task are designed to perform. So that's what but yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how these are going to. These are going to a couple of professional trappers and also a big game hunter up in Canada for field tests. So we'll see how they come back. But I think they're very close. I really do. I don't see any. It may be a tweak here and there, but I don't think it's going to be anything drastic at this point. And this one here, I've used it quite a bit, and it's, man, you talking about a chef's knife. I mean,
it's perfect.
That's a chef's knife.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got that finer tip that gets underneath there, so when you need to skin out the game, and that is a very versatile design. And it's got that triple grind. It's got the scanty portion here for your feathers. Got the point there to where that point is like a faceted tip, a faceted serration actually. And so when you're splitting kindling for your fire, then
Put the point on it and
put
tap
the point
it.
and tap it, it just flies apart. And then you got a saber portion here, a shallow saber for a little bit of strength. But then you got a very high saber here for that fine tip and your game processing. And so it's very versatile knife, very versatile design. And yet it's robust and quick enough that you can snap them limbs off and do a little brush popping with it. Clear game trails.
And that's one of the things when you're talking about clearing game trails and stuff, you want a knife that's relatively thin and quick, because its speed does the job. You hit that little old bitty limb as big as your finger that's in the way, and it just goes pop. It's a clean cut and it flies off.
Sawbriars.
Sawbriars, oh yeah, cat tails, all them
Yeah.
stuff the cat claw briars, we call them, or gotcha vines, that you're trying
Wait
to
a
just
minute.
clear. And people don't think about that, you know, trying to clear out your campsite. You're going to be sleeping on the ground, and you want to get some of these briars out of here. Something you can just go poop, 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 poop real quick and do it. In fact, that was one of the things years ago when you and I had gone to the thing in Mississippi, and we were showing one of your blades to somebody, and I was sitting on the ground, and William handed it to me, and I reached over and was clearing out the area, going pop, 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 and took all the
Cut
briars.
the grass and briars and everything.
And that's what impressed him, was the fact that you just go, just tap it, and it came in half, and I cleared it out in like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, it's because of the design, and it was not bulky and etc. Well, let's reiterate before we close. The 3 knives that are the Skinners, etc., they're in the final stage of field trials now.
Yeah.
You'll be announcing them, and you'll announce that on your channel and etc. And the Bush knife right here,
Yeah, the Field Boss.
the Field Boss.
Field Boss is the name of that. It'll be released here in the next few weeks. Just if you don't know my YouTube channel, it's just do a YouTube search, WC Knives or William Collins, and it'll pop up very quick.
Yeah, if you do a search for WC Knives, you're going to find his, and you're going to find some of my reviews, so you'll know you're on the right track. It's WWC Knives, okay? And then this one is going to be released in a week or two.
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks,
Yeah,
etc.
and then the Master Floyd will be released in a couple of weeks. The skinners will be released probably the first part of summer. That'll give us time to do field trials on them. And we'll get those pre-ordered and for first runs, and in time that we can get them fabricated and out to you guys before hunting season. That's the goals of that. So.
And so that's what William does. William be manufacturing. So the process, just run through it right quick. You put your order in on it, and then you give them a tentative date for delivery, and then you manufacture the knife then. Okay. If he's going through a dealer, that's where he's doing runs. So if a dealer is going to be doing, say, 25 of these, then that's the thing where William will manufacture that and get it to him, and then he gets it to you. So it's sometimes a two-step, because it's whether he's dealing through your site or dealing through a
sometimes
dealer.
when I have like 4 or 5 dealers, and sometimes the dealer will say, "Hey, I want that model for my store," and so we'll make a deal that they'll only be sold in his store. So I mean, that could be a possibility that's coming up for these knives. So,
but he'll point that out when it happens.
yes.
Okay, and we'll also, down in the description, I'll put a list of his dealers. You might have one near you, you know, and that way you can contact them if he's going to be going through a dealer, or say, hey, I saw another one of his knives and you want to put an order in, etc. So that's the way to do it. Well, brother, thank you very much, and I appreciate you coming and camping with me this weekend. It's a great time. I'm just so tickled to see you.
Always good to see you, Blake.
All right, guys, let me show you some more of the camp. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, here it is in daylight. There is my chair on that side. I put down a little towel to keep my feet clean getting out of the hammock. Here's my one wind hammock. Here's my big old down sleeping bag, and see I got my underquilt on. Got the barrel I store the stuff in back there. That's the tub I carry the firewood in. There's my little wood stove. It worked perfect last night. All I had to do is come in here and fire it up. It warmed up the tent real nice, up to 70, 80 degrees in here. Let all my blankets get warm, and etc. So that when I came in to go to bed, it was ready to go, and all my blankets were warm, so I'm not getting in cold blankets. But as you can see, there's plenty of room in this thing, and the stove jack did perfect. No kind of melting. Now let me turn my view around. I think my lens is frosting up a little bit because it's still feeling cool this morning. It was 28 according to them last night, so just hang with me. I'm sorry for my little lens clearing up. I'll clean it up in a second. But as you can see, I can stand up in here with everything sealed up, so there's plenty of room in this tent. Let me ease outside now. Okay, there we go. Now you wiped it. Now you can see the tent all set up. Real comfortable in this. There's my stovepipe coming out right there with that piece of wire on top of it I talked about. Works perfectly fine. There's the guys we're about to start breaking up. That house. This is Mr. Williams' truck. Love the logos on it, and the WC, SK, and the Blackbird Master Woodsman. Love it. I think that's the cutest little propane cylinder I've ever seen for a stove. Okay guys, this is a follow-up where I've got home now and had a little time to reflect and wanted to fully talk about the hot tent, okay, and how I ran this tent in this camp out. Now this camp out was just a gathering of friends over here in Mississippi at a state park, and it was an opportunity for me and William to get together, as you saw, look at knives and stuff like that, just because we hadn't got to see each other in quite a while, over a year. And so that, and Homer and Donnie and his son and Pink, which is John Pinker, we call him Pink, that's the camp name, get together and just hang out, you know, more than anything else. But I know the question that you really want to know is, Blackie, how did the hot tent work? It worked very well. On the first day when I got there and I set it up, all it is it's running the ridge line. The tent is set up, and then I had my hammock slung up, and then I had my stove, as you saw me going through the tent. we had a pretty good wind coming off the lake, and that made it pretty rough in that wind. And so we unhooked the hammock and laid it down, and Pink and I got inside. We just zipped up the hot tent and fired up the stove, and it worked perfectly. It didn't turn it into a sauna, it just warmed it up. So it was very quickly like 60 or 70 degrees in there. Compared to what was outside, it was a 20-30 degree temperature change. Very comfortable just to sit in there. Now I'm sure I could have stoked it up even more, but what I did was I was putting pre-cut hunks of hickory and yopon in there, and I had small tinder to get it going, and then you would load it, get it to burn with the tinder. That would go about 15-20 minutes, and then you would open the door and you would add in the solid hunks of the hickory and the yopon up to that big, and then I would close the door, and it would then burn an additional, say, 40 minutes on that, and then I would open up and reload it. So you figure you'd have to about once an hour have to recharge it. Okay. Now on Friday night it got down to 28, but with the wind and the wind chill it was more like, felt like 18. Now a little rule of thumb that's not scientific, but something I found in my life, is when you're breathing out your nose and you can see your breath and you're next to the fire, it's usually in the 20s, low 20s, when that's the way it is. And so I was wearing plenty of layers. I had on my silks and then polypro and then a layer on the top of that. And then I was wearing my M65 field jacket with the liner in it on top of the same thing, but I had a sweatshirt on and then the field jacket. When I determined I think I'm going to go to bed in about an hour, I went back into the tent and I fired up my stove. I took my sleeping bag, which was the model 48 mountain bag, down mountain bag, and I draped it over my ridge line of my hammock so it'd be up in the top of the tent, and I fired up the stove real good, and then I went back outside, just zipped the door closed, and I went out and sat by the fire and talked to the guys and could keep an eye on the smoke coming out my stack. When the smoke dropped down, 30 minutes or so, I came back in and I went and re-stoked it up. So I'd done that like 3 times when I finally determined it was time to go to bed, and this is exactly what I wanted. My bedding was nice and warm and toasty. So when I went in there, the temperature inside that tent was probably 75 to 80, and outside it was, like I said, felt like the teens. So yeah, it was a severe change, well not a severe change, but very pleasant change. I was able to take my M65 off and wear the liner as a sleeping jacket, and we talked about that in the recent video about using the M65 as a sleep system. The slickness of the liner allows me to slide around inside my blankets and inside my sleeping bag without binding up, and that's the thing that I found irritates me more than anything else in winter camping, is you get all this big sleeping bag and you're wearing all these layers, and you get in there and you just get tangled up and you can't, it's like it clings to your legs and you're trying to roll over and it's wrapping around, you can't kick it free, and it's frustration. So I've talked about wearing my rain suit pants on the bottom and the rain suit top before as a slicky, so that I can twist and turn within my bedding and it not bind up against me and cause me strife and wake you fully up with like, what's going on, you know. Whereas if you're laying on a cot or something, it's one way. When you're in a hammock, everything will twist with you, and so that's one reason I like it much better. Now in the mornings when I got up, I simply had my pillow, which was my M65 field jacket. I would go open it up like I showed in the video and put it on over, I was wearing the shell already, see the liner, and just snap it up. It was already warm because it was under my head. So I was nice and warm and toasty when I got out of my sleeping bag. I had to slide my feet into the boots, walk out, come around and go to the fire to warm up, get breakfast, etc. On the second night, it was actually felt colder, and most people there agreed it felt colder on Sunday morning than it did on Saturday morning. Although the wind had laid, but it felt colder. And we burnt a lot more firewood on Saturday night staying warm than we had on Friday night. So it was all in all a good challenge. It was all a good exercise on it. Now, did I get cold? In fairness, I did a little, but that was not the sleeping bag, my gear, or the tent. I'm not running that stove continuously. I'm letting it warm up the environment for me to come in to go to bed, so that my blankets, my hammock, my underquilt are all warm when I get into it. Because that's one of the most difficult parts about winter camping, is you come in and you lay down and you cover up and you're just laying there shivering because you've got to warm the blankets. You've got to warm the sleeping bag up. You've got to warm the pad underneath you up, and that sucks a lot of BTUs out of you. You know, that's a lot of your fuel reserve right there going to heat up the environment. By using this little stove inside that hot tent, I didn't have to do that. So I was warmer longer before I ever got a little cool. Now, I would say probably an hour before dawn, I woke up a little cool. It kind of felt like you'd brought a leg out and got out from under your covers. And it was just simply that the underquilt and underquilt blanket wasn't quite enough when it's down in the teens. So, lessons learned. If I'm going to be using the one wind hammock, underquilt, and blanket in the teens again, I will simply add another underquilt over the top of it. So it'll be 2 underquilts and a liner. I think that'd be fine. I woke up and I was not freezing, but you just felt cool. You know what I mean? Where you could go back to sleep, you just realize you feel cool. And that strip straight down the bottom where my big old down sleeping bag was not at underneath me was just not quite enough insulation, even through all of my layers. I was still able to sleep and sleep comfortably. I just knew I was a little cooler. Okay? The beauty of all of this was on Sunday morning when we decided it was time to break camp, because that blue barrel that I'd got from my good friend Dan, that's what I take and just pull the barrel, unhook the hammock, put it with the underquilts and all attached straight in the barrel. Zoom. Unhook the straps, drop them in. Zoom. I then set it outside, pulled everything out, and dropped the hot tent and put it into the barrel. Put the lid on, snapped it closed. So my whole camp is in that barrel. Something I can sit on, stack on, etc. It's waterproof. I can store it like that. So when I get to set up my next winter camp, I just open the barrel and out comes the tarp with the ridge line in place, and I'm ready to go. All my stakes and everything are right there in one unit. So for me, that works really well. Now, how would I do differently? As I said, I would have added in another layer underneath the underquilt. Could I run a continuous heat source like a buddy heater, or could I simply just restoke that fire stove? Yes, but I intentionally went with a very small stove because I just wanted a heat source to warm it up for me to get up in the morning, or to warm it up for me to, like I said, go to bed with warm blankets, as opposed to it being cold in there. The material did very, very good at holding heat once it was zipped up and everything. Smoke was not a problem or an issue. Everything was flowing good. And if I was going to set this up to stoke up a fire that ran much longer, I would have a much bigger stove to put in there. Like one of them U.S. Army Yukon stoves, I could stoke that up, and ran correctly, I could get maybe 2 hours out of a full load of that with proper hickory, etc., before I'd have to get up. So I'd probably have to stoke that twice during the night. But I prefer to just carry sufficient blankets so that as long as I get into it and I'm warm, once I'm that nice warm cocoon of warm, I'll go all the way to dawn and not have to get up. I hate having to get up to stoke something up because I wake up cold. I'd rather just carry sufficient bedding not to be cold. But that, and I got to thinking about something. I have not tried it yet, but I thought about it. The stove was very efficient, and when we went to leave on Sunday and I brought the stove out to dump the ash out of it, I expected there to be hunks of unburnt wood. There wasn't. It was nothing but powdered ash. It burnt everything I loaded into it. There were no hunks. It was nothing but white ash. So it drafted properly, it held heat properly, it did everything it was supposed to do to completely consume that wood, keep it going at a good low level. And I can honestly say after that last loading, when I actually lay down and covered up, I would say 45 minutes or an hour later, somewhere along there I'd woke up, shift position, and I could still hear the stove kind of doing a little tick, 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 where it was still hot, I had closed my dampener down to about a 45 degree, and I took my air intake on the bottom down to where it was almost closed. So I was spreading out that burn as long as possible. And so I'm looking at maybe there'd be some sort of insert I could add to it. I thought about maybe some sort of oil burning insert that I could open the door and slide in and close it for a long duration, like 6 hours, 8 hours burn time. On a kindergarten stupid level, once everything was warm and you'd burned up everything in it where there's nothing but ash left, could I wipe the ash out of the way and put something in there? Even like a can of Sterno going, you know what I mean? Because in a well-sealed, like an igloo, a candle, and I've talked about this in videos of putting a candle in an enclosed tent, and it makes it feel much warmer. Even though it's not actually raising the temperature that much, but it gets rid of that chill, and it keeps condensation down, so you don't feel as cold. I wonder if I was to put a couple of those hot Sternos, slide them in and just close it. Would that, keep radiating heat? I have even known guys that did the candle in the upside down flower pot before, just to keep the chill out of the air. No, it will not, but it'll make it decidedly warmer. If it's 18 degrees outside, if it raises it up to 35 or 34, that's a big improvement, isn't it? As opposed to outside. If I could put something that would burn 6 hours, I may investigate that and take a look at it. We shall see whether it's worth the effort. But that's the idea. Now, my closing remarks. And so when I got up this morning, William was up first. He's an early bird. And so he got up and he had the fire going and the coffee ready. And I rolled out uncharacteristically early and went out there and sat by the fire. But all in all, had a great time. Really enjoyed it. I'll make sure to leave a link, make sure to put in the description the stuff I talked about of William's site and the One Wind and the name of this hot tent in case you're wanting one. So if you're looking for one, this would be real easy to use and set up. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you have, please hit that like button. There'll be more videos coming up. And yes, I'm tired. I'm driving home right now, and woo, I want to pull over and sling up my hammock and take a nap. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.